Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Writers Podcast. And I have with me today writer Richard Paolinelli, and I think that's close to what we just practiced. So, Richard, how are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for having me on. And don't worry, my last name is so difficult. I have heard some really interesting pronunciations.
I
My
bet.
favorite is Palaruski.
Belarus.
I'm still trying to figure out where they saw an S and a K in my last name.
Yeah, very good. So, Richard, you're here to promote your latest book, which is Galens Blade, correct?
hmm There you go.
And we're going to get into that. But first, before we do that, I'd like to set the stage a little bit and talk about your background and how you got into writing and things of that nature. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of who you are and where you're at?
Well, I'm a multi-genre writer, but mostly my damage is done in science fiction.
Hmm.
But I'm not afraid to wander into mysteries and thrillers. I've done two nonfiction books that were, projects that were close to me personally.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think I've got like 23 short stories that have been published in anthologies. So I like to I just like to write. I like to create the stories and get them out there and share them and hope people enjoy reading them as much as I did writing them. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell right there.
All righty. So, looking at your bio on your page, and it says that you've been writing since 1983 in one form or another.
Mhm, mhm.
And your background is reporting. Sports was a big
That
component.
was the yeah, that was the majority. Right now, it's still the majority of my writing time has been in newspapers,
Okay.
but I'm starting to catch up in my fiction reading now. So we're getting to that point in my life where it's almost even.
Okay. So you've obviously known that you wanted to be a writer of one
Mhm.
type or another very early on in your life. How did that come about for you?
Well, I kind of got started early. When I was a kid, my dad had a drilling business, and we were driving all over the Western United States.
Mm,
And when you're going from point to point, it took a couple of days usually to get where we were going. And I'm stuck in the backseat of the car with not a whole lot to do. And we didn't have, these little things to kill time with.
right.
So I would take a notepad and a pencil or a pen, and I would just write out little stories
Mm,
just to pass the time. So it kind of, I almost say it's kind of in my blood.
hmm.
When I made the decision that my dad's drilling business was not the future that I wanted for myself, and
Hmm.
that realization came as I was falling off of a drilling rig.
Oh.
I got I Yeah, I was working up on the mast. I got a hose snapped, a high pressure hose snapped, and just tennis racket right up to the side of the head, and off I went.
Wow.
And
And
on the way down, it's like, it's time to get started getting serious about writing. If I survive this,
if I,
I'm gonna get serious about it.
yeah, so
So
that was your life flashes before your eyes kind
yeah,
of
that
epiphany.
was yeah, it took a long time coming down. I am still amazed how long it took me to get to the ground, but
Right.
I got the hint
Oh, that's
basically,
good.
and
Yeah.
I started out as a freelance writer in
Hmm.
'83. I can't reach it, but I my first fiction credit actually came in '86, and
Okay.
I was the lead writer for a comic book series that was being produced by a company in Texas.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I kept doing the things like that, kept doing freelance, and then about '91, I got offered a job as a sports writer, and at
Mm,
that time, I needed a steady income from my writing, or I was going to have to stop doing that.
right.
And so I took it and kind of took this 23 year journey into the world of newspapers.
Mm,
And I got to a point where staying up till 1 in the morning writing sports wasn't gonna cut it anymore.
right.
And I figured I needed to get back to what I really wanted to do all along, was just to write fiction.
Oh, okay.
So
So that was an early goal.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
From the get go, it was I wanted to write books. I've got a couple of stories. One I redid and published a couple of years ago. There's one that probably will never see the light of day again. I don't even know if I still even have a copy of the thing. It was that
Okay.
bad.
Right.
But yeah, it was. I always wanted to write fiction, so I'm doing now finally at the age of 58 what I wanted to do all along.
Oh, excellent. And did you take, was your education based on writing?
No,
No?
I took one fiction writing class at Odessa College in
Hmm.
1984.
Okay.
Um, but no, I was actually, you know, falling back on my dad's drilling business was always the ultimate backup plan.
Okay.
But I started looking into getting into computer programming. And
Ah,
there are times I wish I had stayed with the computer programming.
right.
It's a lot more money in computer programming than there is in writing, but
Uh-huh.
eventually it's what I wanted to do was
Right.
write, and I made the right choice along those lines.
Okay. And one of the maxims of being a writer is you have to read a lot. So I
Mhm.
assume you were a big reader and you have some favorite authors?
I do, and it's people are going to look at me funny when I list them.
Okay.
I started out as a big fan of H.G. Wells and Edgar Allan Poe.
All right.
Um,
So far, so good.
yeah, so far so good. I really got into Tom Clancy's early work.
All right.
The Hunt for Red October. My favorite one of his is Cardinal of the Kremlin, which I wish somebody would turn into a movie, but
Hmm.
Um, and then more modern, I think Jack McDivitt is somebody who I really enjoy reading, and I kind of credit him for, even though he didn't actually do it, he actually gave me the kick in the butt
Hmm.
to when I was looking at getting out of newspapers and wondering what I'm going to do next. I came across one of his books and I read it, and it
Right.
was amazing. It was Time Travelers Never Die.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, this is great. I want to read some more by him. And I started reading the Alex Benedict series. And then I started finding out a little bit more about him. And I discovered that he was the same age, 46, that I was at that time.
Right.
And he made a big career jump to go from being in the Navy and being an English teacher to
Hmm.
writing. And
Right.
I'm thinking, okay, here's the prime example of somebody who's doing what you're thinking of doing.
Right.
He did it. So
Hmm.
can you. So go out there and get to it. So I enjoy reading his stories, and I credit him for being the inspiration for me doing this.
Hmm. Okay. I haven't told you this before, but this podcast is sort of an offshoot of my main podcast, which is a Stephen King podcast.
Yep. And
So,
I do have a favorite Stephen King book.
okay, go
It's
ahead.
actually the Dark Tower series.
Ah, awesome. Awesome.
Until you get to the last book.
Yeah, a lot of people have problems with that, but
Yeah,
there
but
was really only one or two ways that that story could have ended, and I think it
like
ended the way it
I
did. It did.
I'm o I mean, I can live with the way he ended it. I don't think I would have gone that way because
Right.
I have some questions with why you would reset and he hasn't learned anything. Um,
Well, he
or
did.
someone appeared. I didn't pick up that he had learned a whole lot. My
Right.
biggest complaint was him writing himself into a story.
Oh, really? See,
Yeah.
I've heard that before. I thought it was a pretty cool move,
Okay.
and
Yeah. To me, it was like, oh, come on, really?
he was doing meta before meta was a thing, right?
Maybe he was a visionary. But back then, I
Yeah,
remember my reaction was, come on.
yeah,
But
uh,
no, I enjoyed the Dark Tower series. I
yeah,
really did, especially it's Songs of Susanna was
right.
actually my favorite of the whole three whole series.
Mine was Drawing of the Three, with because
That
it
was a
took
good
the
one.
first book, which was basically sort of like an archetype character
Hmm.
story, and it added meat to the bones, and
Yeah,
I just love the concept of those doors on the beach. So I just thought that was pretty cool.
yeah. That was
Yeah.
it was a great series. Like I said, a
Yep.
couple of nicks to pick
Yep.
with the last book, but overall, yeah, I enjoy that series.
Yeah. Well, King's definitely about the journey and not the destination. So
That is true. That
that
is true.
series is exemplifies that to a great degree.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so this is going to be interesting now because you were writing in what you could say business type writing or
Hmm.
formal writing, and that's very structured and restrictive. You only got so many words to get your point across. In terms of sports, the form is very rigid because you have to basically run through the same steps, points every time. So how did you find, or did you find the jump from writing nonfiction straight up reporting to fiction a difficult one, or did you were always kind of practicing it on the side, so you were really ready just to apply yourself more fully?
Well, I was, even as I was doing the newspapers, I would find an hour here and an hour there to write
Mm-hmm.
a book or a screenplay or something. So I was getting into practice. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't forgetting all I had learned back in my creative writing class. But when I made the full time jump, it seems like there's a lot of differences, but to me, I found a lot of the things I had learned during my sports writing and then moving on to editing
Mm-hmm.
carried over.
Okay.
Yeah, when you're writing about sports, you have to write about what you saw and what
Mm-hmm.
actually happened. And in fiction, you're making it up, but you're
Mm-hmm.
still reporting. You're still reporting what you saw, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's in real life or what's ever up in your head. You're still
Mm-hmm.
reporting it in such a way that the reader wants to read it. Now, in fiction, you have a lot more room to play with,
All right.
and you can get into some details.
Yeah.
But I just found that a lot of the approach that I took to my newspaper writing carried over. I didn't really
Okay.
see a big difference.
Okay. So would you consider your writing as pretty streamlined then, or bare bone, or because you got to play in a bigger sandbox, did you uh, revel in the fact that you could now sort of make long expositional passages to describe things and whatnot, or did you
That,
just try to strike a balance there as well?
yeah, that is one thing that also carried over is I don't write big books. I think
Okay.
the biggest fiction novel I have is 70,000 words.
Okay.
And for me, that's big. I mean, I'm usually down between 50 and 60.
Right.
Yeah, I could get extra expansive, but to me, that bogs down the story.
Okay.
I like to have a fast-paced story where you're wanting to turn that page, and you're not getting passages where I spend 5 pages describing the color of a door or something. I mean, that kind of writing bores me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need 5 pages of this. I need to move on. So that's kind of my style anyway.
Okay.
And that could have been born from the newspapers where, hey, look, you have X amount of room, get everything you can into this small
Right.
space.
Right.
But I've read books that are longer.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done and not feel like it's bogging down. But to me, for my stories, I just like a faster pace.
Okay. Um, and how do you approach a novel? Are you I would guess you're an outliner, but maybe I'm wrong. Or you just sort of get an idea and you run with it and see where it goes?
You know what? I am a hybrid in just about everything I do. So I
Okay.
don't really have a pantser or an outliner mentality.
Okay.
My approach is I write the first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Once I've kind of stewed about the idea for however long I need to let it stew before I'm ready. I write the first chapter, then I write the last chapter.
Ah,
And then I go back to the end of the first and I just take off and we're going wherever the characters and the story are taking us with an eye on we've still at the end of the day got to get to that last chapter.
right.
So we just kind of wherever it goes, wherever it flows. So
Okay.
it's kind of a mix.
Right. And has your process changed since you first started to as to where you are now?
No, no, I'm
No.
I'm still, I picked up little tricks that I've
Mm-hmm.
learned, that's just normal, but the overall approach, no. I'm pretty
Okay.
much the same writer in a way that I was even back in the 80s when I did the comic book series. I did the same thing. I wrote the first page, I wrote the last page, and now let's see how we're going to get from A to B.
Right. And does that last page ever change?
One time,
Oh,
one
okay.
time, and it was escaping infinity because I got to the end of the book and I realized that wasn't working. I
Mm.
didn't like the way it ended. and I had to go back and I mean, the overall ending is the same, but the reason why it happened and what comes after changed.
Okay.
So, I had to go back and do a little bit of rewriting. It required me to change the nature of one character.
Right. Okay.
So,
So, sorry, go ahead.
no, it just, normally I pretty much am set, but I'm still open enough to say, okay, that's not going to work. Let's fix it.
Right. Right. So you write the first page and the last page. Do you do any sort of notes about each chapter, or you just totally wing it from that point on?
Well, usually what I do is I have a paragraph, and
Okay.
I'll write each paragraph for each chapter.
Okay.
But
And that,
that's not locked in stone at all. I mean,
right.
I'll decide, no, I need to move, say like what I had for chapter 16, I've got to get that in 10.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
stuff
Yep.
will move around, but I do have an overall idea of how it's going to go.
Right. Okay. What do you find the hardest aspect of fiction writing?
Oh boy. Making sure that the story is going to be believable enough, especially in science fiction. I mean, you're expected to start taking some liberties with
Hmm.
reality, but
Right.
you can't go so overboard that you're going to lose the reader, that they're just going to go, there's just no way that this
Okay.
happens. Um, so that's kind of the thing for me, is just make sure that the reader will buy into it.
Okay. That's interesting because I'm like you. I'm dabbling. I dabble in writing, but I sort of evolved based on as you write and you learn more and you practice and whatnot. You sort of go through phases, and I think beginning writers probably get really stuck on structure and writing, flowery prose and whatnot.
Mhm.
And then you find out the big writers tell you, like, try to make your words not get in the way of the story. And then so like you want to write lean and very precise
Mhm.
to help paint images. And more recently, I think the biggest attraction for fiction writers and readers is characters. And I always sort of thought characters would just rise organically as the story evolved. And now in things that I've been reading on it, it takes a lot of it would seem to me anyhow, it takes a lot of pre-planning. Like there's the backstory, which kind of has a two-edged meaning for some people,
Mhm.
and I think that's probably because of post Lost era where but a lot of backstory ends up actually being in the story, whether it's told through flashbacks or the character reflecting on a moment that they've got context because of what their previous life experiences have given them. So I'm wondering,
Mhm.
how much work do you put into creating your characters, or is it just an organic thing for you?
Um, I really strike a balance between developing the story and developing the characters.
Okay.
Um, that's not to say that as I'm writing, the character will give me a knock upside the head and go, "We need to do this."
Right.
The best example I have of that is a character that I called Little John Singapore,
Mm.
who has become the main character of the series and was never intended to be,
Ah,
but he is kind of taken over the thing. Um,
interesting.
it was definitely not planned, but it
Right.
works, and it's working so well that I'm not gonna go back. I mean,
Hmm.
we're seeing the story of the series play out through his eyes.
Okay.
Um, but he was really always supposed to be just this poor schlub who is always cleaning up the messes behind his captain, who's getting
Mm.
all the glory. But this guy is the one who's doing all the heavy lifting, right?
Right.
But it kind of changed as I was developing the series. So
Mm.
I strive to have that balance. Way I have
Okay.
a very well developed story, why it's going to be a story I'm writing, and why it's the story you should be reading,
Okay.
but paying attention to the characters too, because if
Hmm.
if you throw a couple of 2D characters out there, the reader's not going to connect to them.
Right.
You want them to connect to them. For example, I have a character I kill off, not going to say which book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had a beta reader who was kind of reading each chapter as I got finished. I would send it to him. That character gets killed off, and I got a royal butt chewing for killing that character off, as if I had murdered this person's
Right.
sibling,
Right.
right?
Yep.
That's the
That's
reaction, as sadistic as that sounds.
yeah.
That's the reaction you want. You want the reader
Yeah.
to care so much about them that when this happens, it feels real to them.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So let's since you've touched on it a little bit, let's talk about this. Is this the Galen Blade series or?
No, we haven't really talked about that one.
Oh,
I've
okay.
avoided that one so far.
Okay. So which one do you want to talk about right now then?
Well, let's. I mean, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and jump
Sure.
into it. It's actually the Starquest Fourth Age series.
Okay.
Galen's Blade is the second book. There we go. Got to
Right.
get in there. Book one. As you can see, there's a theme. Galen's
Yeah.
Way.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
it is set in. To give you some backstory on this thing, it is set in John C. Wright's Starquest universe, and John is writing 5 books
Mm-hmm.
that are set in the 12th age of Starquest. But he
Okay.
wrote this amazing Bible and then invited anybody who wanted to come play in the sandbox.
Hmm.
You had to go through the Bible, you had to understand and learn it, and
Okay.
then you kind of have to let them know what you're doing and let them take a look at it and make sure you're not in conflict with what he has set out. But he has laid out 12 different ages
Hmm.
that begin after the human race has been transplanted from the Milky Way galaxy to the Andromeda galaxy.
Oh,
We are
wow.
millions of years in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The human race has completely forgotten their origins. Um, in fact, they call it the Murky Way instead of the Milky Way, um, and they refer to themselves as hominids instead of humans. And as far as they're concerned, they're the only species out there
Hmm.
um, in the entire universe up until like the 5th or 6th age. So I'm safe in 4th age. I've just got humans running around.
Okay.
In 4th age, we come across Galen Dwin, who is a mercenary,
Okay.
who is so feared that the alliance's military won't even go after him because every time they do, all they get back are destroyed ships and bodies, and they've just decided they're going to leave the guy alone.
Hmm.
But he's not an evil person. He's just someone who is going to go do his thing, and you don't want to get in his way or start trouble with him. He's been hired to rescue a kidnapped princess in the first book. And in the process of doing that, he discovers that there's a lot more going on than just a kidnapped princess. And he's right in the middle of a political intrigue where there is actually elements trying to get rid of the alliance and install an empire.
Hmm.
So he's going to help fight that. And in the second book, again, which is Galen's Blade, we pick up the aftermath of that battle, and he and the Princess Rhiannon are now trying to locate her father, who was also kidnapped and replaced, which we find out in the first book. And in the process of going after the missing king, Galen's going to find out a little bit more about his destiny, and it's a lot more uh, detailed than even he could have imagined.
Okay. So when you said the one character had been replaced, do you mean like by a clone or
No,
you
by
or by
by
somebody
his
else?
by his twin brother,
Oh, okay.
with help from the
Uh,
king's own queen. So there's a lot of political intrigue, a lot of backstabbing and betrayal going on that Galen, gets dumped into the middle of, and he just kind of plows his way through it.
okay. So is this kind of like a Game of Thrones in outer space, or is that an unfair?
That could be a fair comparison.
Okay.
It's definitely space opera.
Okay.
Um, we jokingly call the Star Quest universe that John created. It's Star Wars, not Star Wars. It's a lot of the what the original Star Wars trilogy kind of
Hmm.
was meant to be.
Hmm.
Um, so if you're into the classic Star Wars. You're going to see a lot of the Star Wars themes in what's going, especially in John's 12th age. But there's quite a lot of it in fourth age as well.
Okay. And is the universe of the fourth age, is there like, since you brought it up, is there like Jedi mind trick stuff going on?
Not,
The
not,
Force,
no, I
laser
drew the line there.
swords,
No,
robots?
I did not want it to be a complete Star Wars ripoff. So
Okay.
I made some adjustments. There is a AI in the ship that Galen flies called Cassandra, and
Okay.
she is a major player in this series, and her story arc really takes off in Galen's Blade. And
Okay.
I can't say any more about that without doing major spoilers. And I want people to be very surprised when they get to a certain point in the book and we see where her story arc goes. So
Okay.
you do have the AI who was kind of his companion. I didn't want to have the android type thing, because that's Star Wars.
Right.
There aren't Jedis, but there is a race, the race that transplanted the humans to Andromeda, that John calls the Preservers. So there's kind of that element to it, but you're not
Okay.
going to have people running around, force choking and whatnot. Um,
Right.
there are blasters, there are space battles.
Mhm.
Like I said, there's a lot of political intrigue going on. The good guys aren't always going to win. The bad guys are going to seem to have the upper hand at times.
Okay.
It's as space opera as I can make it.
Right. Right. And is there like any sort of enhanced humans with like telepathy or telekinesis or anything like that, or is it
I,
they're
I
all
think I think you'll run into that later on because John
okay?
has all these alien races that are going to be coming along that the human race will encounter
Mm.
as the years go by. I mean, the 12 ages take, I think we're talking over 1,000,000 years.
Okay.
So it's a massive, expansive time.
Mm.
There's going to be an area of the Andromeda Galaxy that nobody living can go into, and it's all dominated by machines because only machines can live there. So you'll
Okay.
have that kind of a race. You will have some with telepathy and whatnot. So if you start with fourth age, it's just the humans. As you go along, you're going to see a lot more going on.
Okay. And what do you envision? How many books this series is going to comprise for you?
Well, right now I've got 5.
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
so I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do in fourth age. That
Hmm.
does not mean that I couldn't branch off because the fourth age is going to cover about 1,000 years.
Okay.
So I will have plenty of opportunity since I'm starting the fourth age and ending the fourth age to backtrack and maybe branch off with some other characters.
Okay.
Haven't planned that so far because right now I just have the 5 I want to do, and I'm also doing about 4 or 5 more books, what we're calling pre-migration, which takes place in the Milky Way galaxy,
Mm.
leading up to the migration. So I'm kind of doing the backstory
Right.
in a series, but that's coming a little bit later, probably another year or two before I get to those.
Okay. Well, I guess the question I should have asked when you first mentioned Starquest is why did you, or what attracted you to this pre-made universe? And do you write outside of that other projects, or is this totally what your focus is on?
Well, right now it's the focus, but I have other projects I'm going to be doing here
Okay.
toward the end of the year. I got into this because I always had what I called the pirate and the princess space opera idea,
Okay.
bouncing around in here, but I never really could nail it down the way I need to have a story nailed down before I start on it.
Okay.
And I had John on my podcast. Actually, I had his wife on first.
Hmm.
And we call her Starquest Central because you send everything to her. She looks it over and she goes, okay, you're good. Or no, on chapter, page, whatever. You can't do that because that is in direct conflict with something coming.
Okay.
So I had them both on and they were talking about the Starquest universe that John had created and the intent to have authors come in if they were interested.
Hmm.
And it connected with what I wanted to do with my Princess and the Pirate. And
Hmm.
so I asked him to send me the Bible and I went through the thing. and everything just kind of fell into place. So yeah, this is a project I really enjoy being a part of.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the only thing I've got going, but it's going to be the majority of the time, because I do have three other series I want to finish
Wow.
on my own. And then I have two. I'm looking at my to-do board here. I have two. I have two standalone novels, and those are the next two I'm going to work on. I'm going to kind of step away from Starquest for a few months
Okay.
and work on these next two novels.
And are they all science fiction?
One is actually, one is a novelization of the comic book series I wrote,
Oh,
or I
okay.
was writing on. And I
Mm-hmm.
spoke to the surviving owner, and I told him what I wanted to do. And he
Right.
said, by all means, go. I want to see what you'll come up with. Because
Okay.
there was a lot of things it only lasted 6 issues before the
Ah,
company folded.
okay.
So there's a lot of things I wanted to do with that I never got a chance to do. So this is my chance to backtrack and take care of some unfinished business with it. The other one, it's going to be a cross between historical fiction and maybe what they're calling Christian fiction these days.
Okay.
It's centered on the biblical character Cain,
Mm.
and the question is asked is, what if the mark on Cain's forehead wasn't a warning to others not to hurt or kill him, but was a warning to death not to come for Cain ever, and now
Mm.
he's cursed to live as an immortal being, and
Oh, okay.
never succeed at anything for his entire life as punishment for killing his brother. So that's kind of, that one has been one that I've been wanting to get finished. I got started on and got busy with other projects. So I want to get that one wrapped up this year. So I'm not really sure I don't know if you call that science fiction or not, but
Mm.
I'm hoping it'll be a story everybody's going to like, how I wrap up Cain's life.
Okay. And with the StarQuest universe, is this? Do you have to pay a fee to write in this, or is it
No,
free to
no,
everyone?
no. You would contact John
Mm-hmm.
and let him know you're interested. You'll probably get the Bible. I think the Bible is now twice the size it was when
Okay.
I first started, because John keeps adding to it. You'll get that. You need to go over it. I know of two other authors who are looking. I think one wants to get into seventh,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's another one that may want to go into 12th with John. So they're getting that sorted out, which is the
Okay.
nice thing about me working in fourth. Since I'm only working with the humans, and I've got it set that the fourth age will end what I've got going on.
Mm-hmm.
I can do whatever I want, basically, as long as I don't pull something in that's going to completely blow up what John's got.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think there's a contract you sign. It's very simple.
Okay.
Um, we did do a quick discussion on what if somebody comes along and wants to make movies out of these things. That's a
Mm-hmm.
can of worms we'll deal with when and if that ever comes up.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think the basic understanding is that will go through John, and
Right.
we will work with John with whoever may or may not want to do that.
Okay.
And I think that's only fair. This is his sandbox.
Right.
So I'm going to be a nice little guest to just play in my little corner and behave myself.
Very, very good.
Yeah.
Are your books? Are you self-published, or do you have a publisher?
Well, actually, I started off traditionally published
Okay.
with my mystery thriller series,
Mm-hmm.
and after 2 years, decided that I didn't particularly care for the traditional publishing game,
Okay.
because I found out that I was doing all the heavy lifting.
Right.
Not only am I writing the book, but I'm out there doing most of, if not all of, the marketing,
Right.
um, and I'm paying 85% of what the book is making to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of 2016,
Mm-hmm.
I decided I was going to make the jump and go indie. And
Ah.
I created my own publishing house. It was Tuscan Bay Publishing then,
Mm-hmm.
and it was going really well. And I met another author. His name is James Christina, and he had Black Dog Publishing. And we lived, as it turned out, I could hit a 9-iron and one hop his porch. And
Okay.
so we kind of started getting together and meeting, and we decided to combine our two houses. And
Cool.
I'm hoping you can see it. we became Tuscan Bay Books.
Ah, okay. Yep. Yeah,
And
very good.
we've been that way since 2018. We are, well, if I could turn this, you can almost see them, I think. There's this shelf right here. There we go. We'll just do
Yep.
this.
There it is. Yeah.
That shelf right there are books produced by Tuscany Bay Books, science fiction, and I did not write a single one of them.
Okay.
So we are starting to publish other authors. I don't remember what our count is right now. I know we've got like 25 books total
Okay.
that we've published in the last 2 or 3 years.
Mm.
So I never expected that I have my own publishing house,
Right.
even though I only own half of it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's been fun having that because we're helping other writers get published that may or may not have been published
Right.
under the old ways.
And beyond publishing, are you involved in other services for these authors? Do you do edits or whatnot for them?
Well, we highly recommend every author get an editor before they submit to us or to any publisher.
Okay.
That will improve your odds of getting picked up.
Right.
You know, and I can speak to that. The first time I started querying, I just, I put my manuscript together, I shipped it out, and it wasn't getting any hits.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent it to an editor, and they found all the screw ups, and we tightened it up, and I sent it out, and instant, okay, we're going to publish this.
Right.
So we do editing. I amazingly enough became a cover creator. Another thing I never expected.
Right.
But that came from newspapers because as a newspaper editor, you're paginating the paper.
Right.
So you learn how to use Photoshop and put things together and do all the tricks there. So, we do cover creating. I either come up with the whole thing or I've been known to, there's a website called Book Cover Zone, and I'll look in there and I'll see if there's something that's already ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
We'll buy that and use that because that's a lot less work to just click and pay and download than it is to put the elements together. But we do a lot of different things. We have our own publicist. I think which is Mickey at Creative Edge.
Right.
He works with our authors. Jim and I are co-hosts of a radio show called The Writer's Block. And we have authors on all the time. So we are constantly promoting, our books, other people's books, and that's really the key is marketing. You've got to market your books, and
right.
And we will help an author as far as what we do is this, but here's what you need to be doing on top of that.
All right.
And we tell them right off the bat, you're going to have to get out there and market your books, and this would be the case even if you're with the Big Five, unless you're James Patterson.
Right. What would you say is the number one thing that writers need to do in order to make their book visible in the market?
Boy, you know what? If I ever discover that secret,
because I was going to suggest that they need to curate their own mailing list, but that's probably the most successful thing you can do.
Mm-hmm. In fact, we've just started one called the Tuscany Bay Books Must Read Book Club, and we have, it's not just Tuscany Bay writers. We've opened this thing up to other authors who want to be a part of it. And the plan is that we will pick 1 or 2 books per week. And then we will have, the blurb, we'll have tweets, whatever kind of social media you have, you blast that book out on it. Or you pick one book or you do both books, whatever. And then by getting that extended reach, you're reaching out to more potential readers. Right. And I've been a part of a system like this with another group, and it works. Every time one of my books is featured, I see an uptick in sales.
Right.
So that's the thing is to develop a newsletter, get together with other authors that are promoting books, get on podcasts like the one you and I are doing right now, get on radio shows, get your name out there, and give the readers a reason why they should come check your book out.
All right. Very cool. So you sound like a busy guy. How do you divvy up your duties with Tuscany? Is it Tuscany Bay?
Yeah, Tuscany Bay Books.
And your your writing time?
Well, I split the day in half.
Ah,
The morning is Tuscany Bay,
oh, okay,
unless somebody schedules something in the afternoon, and then I just flip it. But the
okay,
morning is Tuscany Bay, the afternoon is writing. And
okay.
this month I have suspended the writing because
Mm,
we just took on a brand new series from a publisher that folded.
okay.
And the author came to us and we said, okay, we will re-release your previous 8 books
Hmm.
and we will publish your next 4.
Okay.
That does not leave me any time this month to do anything else but get all that ready to go. So in a normal month, it's Monday through Friday, about 8 to noon,
Mm,
Tuscany Bay, noon to 5. It's my writing, and then after that, unless it's a strange thing where I have to do an appearance,
hmm.
it's personal time after that. And that is something I recommend to every author is find that balance. No
Right.
matter how busy you are, balance your writing with your personal life.
Right.
A lot of writers have a job, a primary job that they have to go
Hmm.
to.
Right.
So, don't just do your job and then come home and work all the time.
Right.
You know, find that balance, you're going to burn out. And
Right.
I was at burnout stage a couple of months ago. I was ready to just walk away from the whole thing. So it's easy to do, no matter how
Hmm.
busy you are, just to reach that point if you don't have the balance.
Okay. Do you have a daily goal, word count goal, or you just work those hours and whatever you get written that
Yeah,
day is it?
yeah. As long as I
Okay.
put in the time, because
Okay.
there are some days where it doesn't flow. You're not going to get a
Hmm.
whole lot out.
Right.
Do what you can.
Hmm.
Um, if you find you have 2 or 3 days in a row where you're not getting anything out, then that's the time you take a break
Okay.
and you just stop and you go find something to just kind of reset for a few days and then come back to it.
Mm. Doesn't sound like you have much time for reading anymore.
Uh, well, with the writer's block, we have to read a book every week.
Oh, okay.
So when our
Okay.
guest comes on, we talk to them about the book. So yeah,
Ah.
I don't have a choice. I have to read.
Okay.
What helps is that I'm a very fast reader.
Okay.
So I can blow through a book really quick and understand what I'm reading and enjoy it. But I can read pretty quick, and
Right.
that's a skill that has come in handy.
Mm. Yeah. I always thought I was a fairly quick reader, but then I see some of these booktubers. Like I don't know if
Mhm.
you know Brian Lee Durfee. That
I've
guy
heard of it.
reads like he goes through like 20 books a month, and I feel good if I go for 4 or 5. But
I
you
I
know,
think I think 5 or 6
it's
is probably my limit for a
yeah,
month. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, it was very interesting talking to you. You've definitely found your place. It sounds
Yeah.
like you're doing all the things that you wanted to do. Maybe you're taking on a little bit more than you thought you were going to. But
Yeah, it is strange. I really looking back, if you told me I would be, a co-publisher of my own house, I would
Mhm.
be doing radio shows as a host of a radio show
Right.
that goes around the world, that still blows my mind.
Wow.
And I'm doing the writing I'm doing, and I still have other things I haven't gotten done yet that I have planned that even go beyond what I'm doing now. If you told me that back in 2013 when I was thinking about making the jump, I'd probably still be laughing.
Right. Okay. Do you do audiobooks at all?
We do. We
Okay.
have, in fact, that's the next thing on my to-do list for Tuscany Bay today is I've got to deal with an audiobook issue.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, we do audiobooks. Um, we're we're actually thinking about getting into graphic novels.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Thinking. Let me say
Thinking.
thinking. So
Yeah.
don't bombard me with graphic novels, people. I'm not sure if we're ready to jump off that ledge just yet. So,
Right.
but yeah, yeah. I mean, but you have to if you want to grow. You can't just get stuck in one little notch.
Yeah.
So that's something we're going to look at. Is that graphic novels? Is that a way for us to go?
Right. I do have one more question. Do you, and because I've been asking writers this the last 2 years or so, how did the pandemic with COVID affect you, or did it not bother you at all? Because I've heard varying degrees of impact for some writers. Like Brandon Sanderson wrote 5 books. On
He's a
top,
space alien. He is a
yeah,
space alien.
on top
He
of
is not human.
his his contracted obligations, the guy wrote
Yeah.
5 books in the last 2 years.
It's weird for me. COVID started early for me because my wife works in healthcare,
Oh, okay.
so we are more likely than not to get whatever's floating around out there.
Right.
And we actually got it before anybody knew it was going to be what it was,
Okay.
because some wise person uh, flew to an event in China and then came back feeling crappy and decided to go to 2 major events in the Omaha area and spread it. And we both got it because one of the people they connected with was around us all the time.
Right.
So I got it. We recovered from it. Didn't we just thought it was a bad case of the flu because we didn't know about COVID yet.
Ah.
But my doctor theorizes that because I had gotten COVID, it can trigger certain other things, and I got hit with a case of shingles right here, right in the face. So
Wow.
I spent, and I had at that time I had a podcast. I had to stop the podcast because I looked like I came off the set of The Walking Dead. Seriously, I mean, it was a mess. So I stopped that, and then that you get hit with shingles in the face, you don't do anything but lay in bed and hurt.
Right.
They can't do anything for it. They can give you a whole bunch of ibuprofen.
Right.
Yeah. So once I got over that, I was still writing. I was still doing really well. So COVID itself really, aside from that little 2-month stretch where I was fighting the COVID and the shingles at the same time, I did okay. It was this last year that I was having trouble writing, but that was we had a lot of things going on. My father passed away in September.
Right.
I had several writing friends that passed away from COVID over the last year, and it hit a stretch.
Sure.
Where I think there was 1 week where every day somebody I knew had died.
Wow.
And how do you gather yourself to write, dealing with all that? And I actually took a break from writing for a while, and focused on Tuscan Bay work, and just kind of figured, when it's time, I'll come back to it. And fortunately I did, because I barely got Galens Blade out before the deadline. I mean, we're talking a couple of days where, if I didn't get it finished, we weren't going to have enough time to hit the release date. So,
right.
But I've noticed now the writing's coming. So, we've sailed through the rough patch, and I think every writer's going to have those.
Right. Well, I appreciate you for sharing all that with me. That with us, that sounds like you had a pretty bumpy road there.
Yeah.
Sure.
The sooner I can forget 2021 ever happened, the better.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that way. So I think that's everything that I've got. And if there's anything that hasn't come up over the course of the interview, I'd like to give you the opportunity to bring it up now.
Well, about the only thing I can think of is the advice I give every writer, whether you're a new writer or an old writer, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of negativity out there.
Right.
People who seem to think that because they have a voice on social media, they should use it. Some shouldn't.
Right.
But I see a lot of people who are just starting writing.
Right.
And somebody will come along and they'll say, your writing is trash, you're a garbage person, you should just never, go back to flipping hamburgers.
Right.
Don't ever listen to people like that.
Okay.
I tell them, keep writing. We need more voices in science fiction, in any books, movies, whatever you create in. We need more voices. We don't need fewer. So do not let the negativity shut you down. And I use the example from when I first started in 1983. I wrote a short story, which wasn't that bad. I look back at it now and go, okay, I could have done this. That comes with learning.
Yeah.
But I sent it to a science fiction magazine, and the editor sent me a rejection letter that basically said I committed a crime against the English language and should restrict myself to working at McDonald's as a floor mopper.
Hmm.
Now,
Wow.
some people would quit, right? They would just
Yeah.
say, okay, I need to stay away from this. I
Yeah.
put that letter up on my corkboard above my typewriter.
Hmm.
That's how old I am. I used to write my stories on a typewriter.
Right.
And I would read that right off the bat every morning. That was the first thing I read. And I
Hmm.
used that to motivate myself to continue writing and to show that person just how wrong they were.
All right.
We are 40, almost 40 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I think I proved my point. I think I proved
Right.
him wrong.
Right.
Don't listen to the negativity. Don't let it shut you down, but use it to motivate yourself to keep going.
Okay. Thank you. That's excellent words of advice. And yes, social media has done a lot of things. If you're on there, and this is one of the things that I really stepped back from. I basically only go there to post something, and then I don't really look at anything else, because if you do, you're just going to go into a rabbit holes of despair.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And no matter what you say, you're going to have a group of people coming after you.
yeah.
Why bother? Why
Yeah.
waste a moment of energy on that?
Yeah.
I basically, for the most part, I'd say about 98% of the time, I go onto my social media just to promote my book or whatever
Yep.
book of the week I'm promoting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a great high note to end this interview on, and I've really appreciated your time, and it was great talking to you, Richard.
Well, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Great, and look forward to maybe talking to you again down the road with your next book or whatever that comes up.
Definitely. Well, I'll tell Mickey to get it set up.
All right. Super. You enjoy the rest of your day.
You do the same.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
And scene.